The Hoffman Show, we're on the Team 980, always live as well in the free Odyssey app, and now live on iHeartRadio and TuneIn as well. Of course, still live on YouTube at the Team 980 if you want to watch us on the video side. 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. every day, all those places, including the YouTube. You can watch Kevin Sheehan on the Kevin Sheehan Show, or you can just keep listening right now because Kevin's with us. We got the daily double of uniforms and stadium to talk about. And Kevin, you've been on top of all the uniform reporting. You've had some sources tell you some things along the way here. And we finally got an announcement from the team that there will be the alternate uniforms announced next week. What are you expecting those uniforms to look like? And if they are what you expect, what's your reaction to that?
Well, let me just say this. I'm not a uniform person. When I say I'm not a uniform person, I'm not one of those people that can say, oh, well, the stripe was here in 1989 and then they moved it to here. I just don't pay that much attention to the stuff. I do know this. I don't like anything about the branding that was unveiled on February 2nd, 2022, including the name and the current uniforms. I don't know what what I'm expecting is what I heard and talked about all the way back in October of last year, and that was that, even if they decided at some point not to do anything with the name, because they were certainly still considering it at that point, they were definitely going to do something with the uniforms to make them look like something resembling the team that, was here before 2022. And so I'm expecting something of like a throwback, to real burgundy, and the color scheme will look like the old uniforms. I don't think the old logo is going to come back. It's not that the logo, Craig, was ever a source of controversy, because it never was. The name was, the logo wasn't. But I don't, the thing that I was told back then is that the logo might be used somehow, but it's not a fit for the name. It would have to be a kind of a fit for whatever name they went to. So, that's what I'm expecting, is alternates that sort of look like something from the past, that will maybe make a lot of us, feel like we're watching the team that we grew up watching. And what I was told, again, all the way back in October that I shared with my audience was that, the hope would be that it would go from alternates to something a year or two later that might be more permanent.
So the logo, I definitely think, is not coming back, and the hint we got from that is they gave us a silhouette, except for on the helmet where the W was.
Exactly.
It very much, and I was told that was like, kind of take the hint. That is what it's going to be. Kevin, I'm curious because we had this conversation yesterday on our show. Ben is producing for us this week, and he's 21 years old, so he's a child, and I'm 35, and so I feel like kind of two interesting age brackets. Then you have kind of your era of fans that got to actually grow up going to games at RFK, and what Ben and I were talking about is how, for people of my generation and younger, and especially for his generation, where the old name, logo, and the colors, like the brand of that team, is mostly sadness because they didn't have the good times that you got to experience at RFK, seeing Super Bowls, being there when the stadium was shaking, all of the things that are just lore to us. So I'm curious, when you have taken calls on this on your show and you interact with the younger fans, what are those conversations like when you're in this chair talking about it versus someone who has my experience growing up watching a team that was mostly sad when I think of the burgundy and gold?
A lot of people like to tie it to kind of age. Like if you're over a certain age, over 40 or over 45, this stuff really, really matters to you. What I have found is anybody that's been from here, even the kids of people who were big fans and grew up in RFK and the whole thing, that they have a strong affinity for what it used to be, name, branding, uniforms, etc. But, I don't have the data that the team has. This has, been a big part of the conversation for me over the last couple of years, and that is, there's no easy answer because Redskins isn't available, all right? So I know there's still people that say, oh, well, the political climate has changed. Why not? Well, why not is that, the corporate sponsors of the NFL that have created this $27 billion monstrosity, that the toothpaste left the toothpaste holder and its tube and the toothpaste tube, and it's not coming back, even if it's okay for it to come back, because for too many people it won't be, including, sponsors and, more importantly, their shareholders, customers, etc. So without that, which would be the home run answer, everything else is, difficult. It's like there's no easy answer. So coming up with the answer to the name and all the other stuff was never going to be easy. I always felt like doing something about it was better than not doing something about it. But 12-5 and 2 playoff wins allowed them sort of the path of least resistance. But it's not an easy answer. And the other part of it, Craig, is the people with the greatest lifetime value are people that are young. That's the future of the business. So whatever they're doing, they should be targeting a younger audience that's going to be around a much longer period of time and have a lot more money to spend. And by the way, I would guess doesn't care as much about, name, branding, etc. But they have those answers. Everybody else is just speculating.
Kevin Sheehan with us here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, listen to Kevin each day, 10 a.m. to 1 here on the team at 980. You mentioned how the record last year, and I think a couple other factors, like the fact that that Adam Peters came up with the Commander's tag type of thing, and that now all of a sudden means something, changed the calculus here. How much did you feel at all that changing for you personally last year? Because I'm with you. Like, nothing they did on February 2nd, 2022, I'm like, oh, this was... nailed that. Great job, everybody. But it also, that's what we associated it with. Now, when I think of Commanders, I think of Jaden Daniels. Did you find that happening to you as well at all last year? Or are you still like, no, it still kind of sucks, and, hopefully these alternates will eventually become the permanents?
Yeah, I mean, I look, it wasn't just, February of 2022. People had quantified it out there. 2/3 of the fan base basically had disappeared. And it wasn't just because of that. It was because of Snyder and the horrific, performance of the team and the, awful way in which the team behaved, et cetera. But that was the death knell for a lot of people. And a lot of those people have not come back. And, a lot of that's reflected just in some of the ticket sales stuff. I mean, if anybody out there is, has even inquired about tickets, I mean, they're being hounded. You can get tickets for games next year. Now, I would guess that by the time we get to some of these games, they're going to be sold out because, 12-5, superstar young quarterback usually means in the NFL, you're sold out season ticket wise the next year and pretty quickly. But I don't feel it the same way I used to feel it. I don't think I ever will. I think a lot of that was sucked out of it during, especially the last 10 or so years of Snyder. And then obviously the name and the brand is definitely a big deal for me. But with that said, I loved watching Jaden Daniels last year. I do a show like you do every single day. This team is the number one topic in town, always has been, probably always will be. The NFL is the top topic in almost every town. And that was just a fun team to watch and a great player at the most important position on the field to watch. And so, I've got something vested just in that I was a huge Jaden Daniels fan coming out. I was, screaming, you got to take this guy. He's going to be the next, big deal. So you know how that goes. We want to be right. But yeah, I was into it. And I'll tell you what, when we got to Championship Sunday against the Eagles, to be in that spot after 33 years of not being in that spot, to be there on, that stage, 2 games, Championship Sunday, that felt special for anybody that's rooted for Washington over the years. Would I have preferred the old name? Yeah, of course. But there was something special about that game and the way it sort of went until it went poorly late.
Kevin Sheehan with
late in
us.
the first half.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, it got late early, as they say. Kevin Sheehan with us here on the Hoffman Show. You also talked to Mayor Bowser this week about RFK and the latest. She said she's quite concerned about this deal. And Kevin, what I can't get a straight answer from anybody on, and I feel like you tried to get this out of Mayor Bowser, and she expertly politically dodged the question, is this July 15th deadline real, or is it political pressure, basically? Is this something where if they don't get this deal done, they can't complete construction on time, they can't bid for the World Cup, they can't do the things that they want to do, and they can if they just go back to Maryland, so they would? Or is this political pressure because the Commanders and the mayor's office like the deal and they would like the terms to be what they are? What is your lean on that, having talked to the people that you've talked to?
Well, I had Mark Ein on yesterday, and he, like I said, is there a point where it gets too late, and it's too late for them to vote? And he said, well, of course there is, a time in which it gets too late, but he wasn't going to put a date on it either. So yeah, we tried to get the actual date. We know that the term sheet, the agreement between the city and the team, the exclusive negotiating period was through July 15th. But that doesn't mean that the term sheet expires on July 15th. The term sheet, the deal that the city has with the team, continues to be enforced. It just means that if the team wanted, they could then go back to Maryland or Virginia. I, Craig, think this is going to get passed. I think the city council will end up voting on it sometime before the end of the summer. I don't think it'll end up being in September. I mean, it's almost at this point, like, why even? The team's frustrated, clearly, because, government doesn't work at the same pace that, business, and especially when you're run by a group of people that have been entrepreneurs their entire life, in that 24-hour, 7-day a week, sort of mindset. And I'm sure they're like, you got to be kidding me. Can you guys just lock yourself in a room with us and let's get this thing hammered out and let's get it done? But I think it's going to happen, and I think it'll happen before the end of the summer.
Well, that was to me one of the fascinating things about what Mayor Bowser said to you was she's like, I don't know what they want. We just got to get in a room and get this thing done. And I think that sounds really good. But if you listen to the council side of it, if you have an Eric Flack or a Mark Seagraves on and you ask them about it, they'd be like, the reason they can't do that is because they haven't had the thing long enough to know what they even want. Like, they haven't had a chance to read the bill because the mayor was so late with her budget. And of course, because it's politics, no one's going to do any self-reflection or own their part of it. And so I agree with you, Kevin, that this thing is going to get done. My question is, could they just do it without snapping and snipping at each other? Could they do this without the posturing? Or are we just going to have to live with this and pretend like the things they're saying are important, knowing the outcome all along?
Yeah, I can't pretend to know what they have and what they don't have. I mean, we know that the term sheet, the deal was done late April, but there was still going to be the process of it being incorporated into the budget. And I don't understand all of that. But yeah, I do think that, I certainly think that the team is probably, there's a lot of eye rolling and pulling out hair because of how, these things get viewed, and the talk of, well, we're not going to be around and we're going to recess and we can't get to it until mid-September. It's just not the way that they've operated in their businesses for their entire lives. They've got a client, they've got a big deal, whatever it takes, we're going to get it done if we've got to lock ourselves in here all weekend long and answer every single question that anybody has. And I don't know that they feel like that sense of urgency is on the other side. But at the same time, the team wants to be there. The city wants to be there. The mayor does, the council does. And that polling that came out, a month ago now?
Yeah.
I mean, how many cities, when tax dollars, no matter what level of tax dollars, go towards, billionaires building a new stadium, usually the polling is terrible on those things with tax-paying residents, and the majority, I think it was 55%, want it. So it's going to get done. It'll get done, and hopefully there won't be any hard feelings. It's just business.
It is, and what's really up here is the details of what goes into that, and it sure would be nice if they would release some of the information so we had an idea what they're quibbling over. But it has been a very behind the scenes secretive process, and so we wait.
Yeah, and by the way,
wait.
Craig, I want, as a DC resident, I want the city council to fight for every last thing. It's exactly what they should be doing. The issue is, you had this term sheet, you had a deadline of exclusive negotiation, and they're talking about, potentially 2 months beyond the deadline date. And I can't tell you for sure if that is something that's appropriate or not, because I don't have all the information, nor do you.
Right. And that's the thing, is like everyone seems to be doing their job. It's just some of their jobs run in conflict of each other, which is, in part how it's set up. It's why you have a council and a mayor's office that have to agree on stuff. But it sure is complicated and messy, and it will be nice when we get to September and just get to talk about ball on the field, and hopefully this is all done. And then, it's just a much simpler time in sports talk radio. At least we have something to talk about in July. Kevin Sheehan with us here on the Hoffman Show. Again, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Also check out the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast wherever you get yours. Kevin, appreciate you doing this. Have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you soon.
Anytime, Craig. Thanks. You too.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.